Many of my contemporaries that I talked to went through quite similar things, especially a lot of the artists that I know.
Let me finish this with one last question. I'm curious, I don't know if you want to answer this question, but how is your relationship now with your mom and dad?
Oh, my relationship with my mum and dad is good. But I accept them for who they are. And I think they, you know, it's tough. It's tough being a parent. It's tough to know what the right things are. My parents are a different generation. And the choices that, you know, the information, the education is very different. The way that I can communicate with my mother and my father is very different than the way that they could communicate with their mother and father. And in that respect, the way that they behaved was indicative of partly to do with their relationships. My relationship with my daughter is on a completely different level than I ever had with my parents. You know, it's
more equal, maybe.
It's more equal in a certain way. I mean, I don't want to be like a cool parent. I was having this conversation with Ian Brown recently, and it was like, you know, being one of those cool parents that's sitting there smoking a joint with your kid, you know. I don't know, you know, there's boundaries are important, but in another respect, you know, the way that we learn to communicate and we understand about emotion and feelings and those ways of communication are very different. And so the relationship I have with my daughter is very different than what I went through when I was that age. So what I'm saying is I don't blame my parents for that. I didn't come from an abusive family. It's just that there was a huge breakdown in society at that point in time. Middle class, especially families, the first generation of divorces, you know. And I don't think that anybody knew really how to deal with it. So I was part of that generation, and many kids that I talked to, many of my contemporaries that I talked to went through quite similar things, especially a lot of the artists that I know. And again, we talk about our own children, how to not sort of carry that tradition on, you know.
Interesting. You were saying, well, hip hop and your family background, music-wise. You're saying well, it all melted together on the UNKLE albums. Can you say that maybe it melted more together on this album, on this new album?
I don't know. I mean, the relationship and the way that me and Pablo work together is still the same way as we kind of have always made records, which is coming from a sort of sample culture back, you know, sort of collagic way of constructing music, and I think that part of that culture has never left us. And you know, if it's funny, we were drunk recently at home after finishing a record, and we were watching these old TV shows that we basically were the same shows me and him watched that got us into hip hop, which was one show was called Bombing, which was the first British TV show to ever show hip hop, and it had the Wild Bunch, and you know, which was 3D from Massive Attack, and Nelly Hooper and Daddy G, and I remember and he was going, yeah, same with me, that you looked at 3D and you wanted to be that person, you know, you wanted to be in that crew and wow DJing and seeing people like Bambaataa, and then sort of a lot of British hip hop artists through that, you know, a very early hip hop artist coming through that documentary. That period is something that's our, I suppose, is a golden period for both me and him, and that communication's always within. When we're making records, we can reference so much of that time.
So that's always, let's say, the starting point for you when you work together on a song.
It's not a starting point. It's just a mutual. It's just a thing that you have. It's like a kind of, there's certain ways that you communicate, and we still, you know, you reference certain things from certain periods because that's your the building blocks that you grew up with, you know, and I think that's never changed. It's not changed since I started my wax. It's the same dialogue that I had when I worked with Shadow. Slightly different dialogue with Rich because he didn't really grow up with that. He didn't go as far back into hip hop as me and Pablo do, or me and Shadow do. But you know, but dance culture, you know, as a whole has been a massive influence, and I had that relationship with Rich.